Hi Tigers, welcome to the Odyssey. I'm excited to do this book with you. I want to remind you, we talked about it in the first video, that this is the abridged copy of the Odyssey, which means they've taken the original poem written by Homer and they have made it shorter and they have changed the language so it is easier to understand. Like I talked about before, that the later on in your academic career, I am sure you're going to be covering this book again. But this gives you a good introduction of what the story about. The Odyssey is the second of two epic poems written by Homer. The first poem being the Iliad, which goes over the whole Trojan War and the Trojan horse. This book goes into Odysseus's journey home, trying to get home after his long battle with the Trojans. This book was probably written back in the 8th century, which was about 725 BC, long time ago. It was written as a poem. They say that they think that the original poem was written to be sung, not necessarily even spoken, sung along with like a single-strummed instrument. The original poem has, sorry, I'm looking at my little cheat sheet, 12,110 lines of verse. A long poem. So I'm excited to read this book with you. I also did want to show you that this book has a lot of difficult names in it. And even as an experienced reader, I had trouble getting through some of these names. And so, hang on a second, I'm going to try not to drop the phone and show you this paper that I have here. Here it is. I have a paper which allows us some help saying some of these names. So if you are reading this book on your own, I highly recommend that you print out that pronunciation guide to help you get through some of those names. And if you happen to see me look off to the side as I'm reading to you, it's because I want to take a quick look to make sure I'm saying the name right. But I also tried to make myself some pencil notes in my book if I ran across the name that was difficult for me. So just know that even for experienced readers, sometimes we still struggle with names of things too. And it's often good to do a little research, just like I did, to figure it out before you get started. And so we're going to start with the prologue in this book. And in the prologue, we're going to be introduced to some gods and some goddesses. In your reading response form, which is a second Google Drive document that I'm going to send you, you're going to be responsible for typing out which the name of the god and what they were the god of. For instance, Zeus, god of all gods. So I want you to maybe open up the document as I read, or take notes with the gods that I'm reading and write down what they were the god of, and that's going to be part of your first reading response to this prologue activity. So if you have your reader's notebook, reader's journal, take notes, or just refer back to the video as you fill in that reading response form. All right, let the journey begin. Here we go. This is the story of a great hero named Odysseus, king of Ithaca, who won victory in the famous Trojan War. He was the leader of a great many men. His soldiers fought beside him, and they were very loyal to him. This was a time when the gods and goddesses roamed and ruled the earth. The home of the gods was Mount Olympus. From up there, the gods watched humans struggle down on earth. Among them was Zeus, king of the gods, with his children Athena and Hermes. Athena was the goddess of wisdom, strength, and war. Hermes was the messenger of the gods. There was also Aphrodite, the goddess of love, Hera, the goddess of women and marriage. Poseidon was the god of the sea. Sometimes the gods got involved in human lives. Odysseus and his soldiers angered some of the gods during the Trojan War. Because of this, the gods decided to make Odysseus's voyage home very long and rough. It became a winding journey, an odyssey, that took Odysseus 10 years. Along the way, he and his men passed many islands and met many creatures. Some of the creatures were good and some were bad. Some of them were helpful and some of them meant to harm Odysseus and his men. But Odysseus was lucky, and he was helped by the goddess Athena. She took pity on him. But the best of the stories start at the beginning, so then shall ours. The Trojan War began because of love, jealousy, and betrayal. One day, Zeus was hosting a wedding banquet on Mount Olympus. All of the gods, half the gods, and royal people, I'm sorry, let me read that again. All the gods, half gods, and royal people were invited, except for hang on. Oh, I don't have a pronunciation for that. For Eris, the goddess of trouble. As revenge for this, Eris came in disguise and threw an apple down into the banquet table. It was a gift, she claimed, for the fairest goddess in the room. Athena, Hera, and Aphrodite began to fight over the apple. They asked Zeus to decide who was to get the fruit. Zeus was smarter than that and refused. Instead, he named a young mortal man to be the judge. His name was Paris, and he was from the city of Troy. The three goddesses began to bargain with the young man. Hera offered Paris power over the lands far and wide. Athena promised him wisdom, strength, and courage. But Aphrodite offered the man the best prize of all. She promised the love of the most beautiful mortal woman in the world. The young man chose Aphrodite as the fairest goddess of the three. Aphrodite enjoyed the apple. The most beautiful woman in the world was Helen. She was already married to King Menelaus of Sparta, but Paris didn't care. He went to Menelaus's castle and took Helen back to his home in Troy. Menelaus was furious, of course. So was the king Agamemnon, his brother. They set out to take back Helen. Menelaus and Agamemnon took many other men with them, including Odysseus. This group of mighty kings and their soldiers were called the Achaeans. They sailed their great ships to the coast of Troy. This is how the Trojan War began, and it lasted 10 years. After years of struggle, the Achaeans were finally victorious over the Trojans. Helen was reunited with her true husband, Menelaus. In this final year of the war, Odysseus came up with a plan to destroy the city of Troy and end the war completely. He directed his men to build a giant, hollow wooden horse and told them to climb inside. Odysseus joined them in hiding. The horse was pulled to Troy's city gates and left just outside. There was a note around the horse's neck, and it said that the creature was an offering from Odysseus to the goddess Athena. It also said that his army had left Troy. The Trojans were thrilled to find the horse at their gates. To them, it meant that the Achaean army had given up. The Trojans dragged the beautiful carved creature into the center of the city. They threw a big party to celebrate the winning of the war. Odysseus and his men waited until night arrived and the moon was full, and then they crept out of the giant horse and attacked the celebrating Trojans. The Trojans, who were surprised by the attack, had no chance. Odysseus and his men won the battle and destroyed the city of Troy. With the war finally over, Agamemnon, Menelaus, and Helen set sail for Sparta. The other Achaean kings and soldiers also left to journey home. It had been a long and awful war, and they were already ready for peace again. But the Achaeans had angered some of the gods during the Trojan War. The soldiers' greed and violence enraged them. The soldiers had destroyed many temples to the gods in the city of Troy, and this was not allowed. Because of this, the gods decided that the men would have difficult journeys after the war. The travelers faced several storms and many shipwrecks. Many of them died trying to get home. Odysseus desperately wanted to go home, too. After all, he and his soldiers had enjoyed a great victory. He wanted to celebrate with his friends and family. He could not wait another hour to see his wife Penelope and his son Telemachus. But he too had a very long and difficult journey ahead of him, and we shall join him. So that's our prologue. Kind of gives us a little background of what happened in the Iliad with the war, and how he just really wants to go home now to see his wife Penelope and his son Telemachus, and kind of pick up in his life where he had left off before the war. So your job now is to go over to your reading response form and fill out the questions for your first day's assignment, And also you're going to find your vocabulary there. You will have a vocabulary test after we finish the book. So I recommend that you work on Quizlet, practice like we always do, and have a great rest of your day. All right, goodbye.